So it's almost like those that are dead, those that are on the other side, want to come back into this physical form, because only through this physical form do we gain the knowledge that we need to mature and find the understanding that we need to, and say, well, don't really like this picture, kind of want a different picture. This is like hell on earth, and we are about to create heaven on earth. And it's like, what does heaven look like? If you can put a description to that, well, everybody be healthy, because that's a problem. When anybody's dealing with a health problem, aging is another, accents are another, healthy planet is another. We have a lot of things that we can make a list of what heaven would actually look like. We don't believe in our full potential, but if every single person on this planet believed in their own personal full potential, and we are supported by society to live in that full potential, then we create it, and we create heaven on earth, and our lifespan will definitely increase. But you have people that have warped sense of reality, that problems can't be solved, that we would have an overpopulation problem if every soul was reincarnated back into a body form, so we can all transform into the next stage of our conscious type experiences. There is no such thing as an overpopulation problem. There only is a problem that you can't see the answer to, because the answer is invisible to you. But death is not the answer. Death is the wrong way. Just some thought.
Antiparticles are created everywhere in the universe where high-energy particle collisions take place. This process is artificially simulated in particle accelerators. When matter is created, antimatter is created simultaneously. Hence why the lack of antimatter in the universe is one of the biggest unsolved questions in physics to date. When we trap antiparticles through electromagnetic fields, we can study their properties. The quantum state of particles and antiparticles can be interchanged by applying the charge conjugation, parity, and time reversal operators. To clarify, if a physicist whose body was made of antimatter would do experiments in a laboratory also made of antimatter, using chemicals and substances of antiparticles, he would find almost exactly the same results as his matter counterpart. But when they would merge, immense energy would be released proportional to their mass. Very recently, Fermilab discovered how quanta such as mesons are switching 3 trillion times per second from matter to antimatter. When we study the universe from a quantized frame of reference C, we have to take into account all experimental evidence that applies to quanta. This includes how matter and antimatter are created simultaneously in particle accelerators, and how mesons switch back and forth between one and the other. This has significant consequences when applied to C. From a quantum perspective, every instance of C has an anti-C. This explains the missing symmetry or antimatter in the universe and is closely related to the arbitrary choice of emitter and absorber in the Wheeler-Feynman time-symmetric theory. The unperturbed time t in the uncertainty principle is the required time or cycle for quanta to exist. Similar as observed in mesons, our personal experience of time or interval of the current moment reaches its threshold when C is cancelled out by its anti-C. C's interpretation of this single self-annihilating moment is framed within an abstract arrow of time. If we then want to define interaction and look at the basic properties of the wave-particle duality of quanta, all interactions would consist of interference and resonance. But since this isn't enough to explain the fundamental forces, we are required to use different models. This includes the standard model, which mediates the dynamics of the known subatomic particles through force carriers, and Einstein's general relativity, which describes macroscopic phenomena such as the orbits of planets, which follow a curvature or ellipse in space and a helix in space-time. But Einstein's model of space-time doesn't hold up on quantum levels, and the standard model needs additional force carriers to explain the origin of mass. Without success, a unification of both models or theory of everything has been subject of much research.
Again, what the hell does all that mean? It's like scientists go so far deep down a tunnel that they start to see tunnel vision within the sciences and then try to relate it to, well, what does this mean in everyday life? And it's almost like, okay, as soon as matter is created, there's an equal antimatter. One's seen, one's not seen. That means, and when they both collide, it outputs the energy equivalent to its masses. Now, what could that possibly mean? Okay, if we look at a problem, life experience gives you a problem. At the very same time a problem occurs, the same time a solution is occurring. But the solution is invisible, but the problem is present. You can see it. The time it takes for them to collide, the problem and solution meshes, the energy of the solution, the outcome of the problem and the solution being unfolded. You can't have a solution without the problem. You can't have good without evil. So when they both merge, both right brain and left brain merge together, we evolve. And what do we evolve into? Something completely different. As soon as you have a problem and you have the solution, but the solution then unfolds, it then creates typically another problem. That you then have another problem that's created and another solution that's created instantly. It's the same thing with life. Interesting concepts. And it is our evolution. They're patterns within patterns within patterns. It's like God created baby God. Didn't create dogs and cats. Mind you, they're all creations of God, but God created a reflection of himself, but it's the next generation of itself. And in order for us, like if I had a child, it would be the same thing as a God giving birth. Why would I have a child? What is the purpose of creating life? When we want to understand the meaning of why God creates life, look at ourselves. Why do we create life? And then you see a maturing. You see a lifespan of problems that your next generation wants to improve. Every single kid on this planet says, I ain't doing it the way my parents did it, because they're the evolution of your parents' problems or challenges. Typically, they repeat the same pattern over and over again. So that is the trick. That is when all of humanity makes our evolution, when we mature into who we're supposed to be. Just a theory of what it is they're looking for, because it's like, why are scientists even going down that path? Why are they observing the things they're observing? Why are they looking at particles and antiparticles and, accelerators and, why are they doing that? And there is a micro and macro to everything. So whatever is in the smallness of our experience is also in the bigness of our experience. That's why there's no aliens. The universal world is another reflection of ourselves. The planets, the stars, they're just like big, massive rocks. Rocks that you see, big, massive particles, but massive particles that are formed together that create something. Same with our planet. But we are the epicenter of all of reality. Reality wouldn't exist without us because we are the consciousness of all of reality. So we are creating everything in our minds. And it's as our minds evolve, so does our universe.
Quantum mechanics is merely mathematical descriptions, and their practical implications are often counterintuitive. Classical concepts such as length, time, mass, and energy can also be approached with similar descriptions. By building on de Broglie's equations, we can substitute these concepts with abstract vectors. This is a probability-oriented approach towards the basic and already existing concepts in physics that allows us to unify quantum mechanics with Einstein's relativity. De Broglie's equations show how all reference frames are quantized, including all matter and all energy. Particle accelerators have demonstrated that matter and antimatter are always created simultaneously. The paradox of how reality can emerge from abstract building blocks that annihilate each other can be explained by using these quanta as the frame of reference. In a simplified analogy, we need to look at things through the eyes of a photon. The reference frame is always a quantum and defines how space-time is quantized. When it increases or decreases, space-time increases or decreases as well. This is reflected in quantum mechanics as the mathematical description of the probability amplitude of the wave function, or in Einstein's relativity as time dilation and length contraction. For a quantized frame of reference, mass and energy can only be defined as abstract probabilities. Or if we want to be more concrete and establish a mathematical framework, as vectors which can only exist when we assume an arrow of time. They can be derived as resonance and interference with the reference frame, which defines the minimum unit or space-time constant c, equivalent to the constant of Planck in quantum mechanics. Experiments show how conversion of matter into energy through its antimatter brings about gamma rays with exact opposite momentum. What seems to be a conversion is the ratio between opposite vectors interpreted as distance and time, matter and antimatter, mass and energy, or interference and resonance within the abstract arrow of time of c. The sum of opposite vectors is always zero. This is the reason for the symmetry or conservation laws in physics, or why at the speed of c, time and space are zero due to length contraction and time dilation. A consequence is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which states that certain pairs of physical properties, such as position and momentum, cannot be known simultaneously to high precision. In a sense, a single particle is its own field. This does not explain our sense of continuity, where c cancels itself out within its own required interval. But when these vectors are exponentially amplified or accelerated relative to and within the abstract arrow of time, the underlying mathematical algorithms, also describing the fundamental forces, can bring about a consistent reality and have abstract building blocks. This is why the harmonic motion equations are used in many fields of physics involving periodic phenomena, such as quantum mechanics and electrodynamics, or why Einstein's equivalence principle, used to derive the model of spacetime, states that there is no difference between gravity and acceleration. Because gravity is only a force when interpreted relative to an oscillating frame of reference. This can be illustrated with a logarithmic spiral curve being reduced to a helix curve by the reference frame, making objects spin and move in orbits. Visually simplified, two amplified or growing apples will be interpreted to attract each other when observed by an amplified reference frame, as the size seems unaffected. The opposite occurs with interference. In a simplified analogy, the increase or decrease in the size of objects as we get closer or further away is determined by the shift in vectors of the reference frame.